Great. Thank you, Kenton. Good evening. My name's Kathy Tullis. I'm the chair of Democrats Abroad Spain, and I'm happy to welcome you to this Democrats Abroad Global Candidates Forum. Tonight, we'll be hearing from candidates for chair and vice chair of DA Global. This presentation is brought to you by 4 of our countries working together: Spain, DA UK, represented by Chair Brett McHarg, France, represented by Chair Danny Follett, and Germany, represented by Chair Kenton Barnes. So without further ado, we will turn over and discuss what we're going to be doing this evening. We will have the chat available. However, we do ask that persons not use emojis in the chat or on your screen, as they're problematic for the visually impaired. Instead, please use your, we'll be using voice to tell people when their time has run to 10 seconds before time and when time is up. In addition, we ask that you use * hand up to ask questions in the chat. We'll have a little more information about that process in just a moment. Today, we'll meet some of the candidates for our 2 positions, chair and vice chair. We invited everyone, and the ones that RSVP'd are the ones that you see before you today. We'll first hear candidate statements, which are 3 minutes each. The order of the candidates for each presentation and question has been randomized using random.org. Then all candidates will answer a series of pre-selected questions, which were gathered from participants in advance via a Google form. Also, some of them were proposed by the organizers. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions. Our apologies because we don't have time for all of the questions, but I'm sure there are a lot of good information will be made available to you tonight. If we don't ask your question, please feel free to put that into the chat and ask during the open session. I do want to assure everyone listening that no one except the organizers has seen the list of questions. Orders of answers have been randomized, and answers will be limited to 2 minutes each. Then in the second half of our event, we'll have an open question period. Questions will be answered by all the candidates for a position, again in a randomized order, unless your question is oriented to a particular person. An example here would be, so Art, what did you mean when you used the phrase X, Y, and Z? So that would be the only time when we'll be addressing only one candidate in particular. To ask a question, please do write * hand up in the chat and indicate which position or person the question is for. Please make your questions for either chair or vice chair candidates, but not for all. We'll go in order of questions received in the chat, and we do ask that you hold off on putting those questions into the chat until we get to the second part of the presentation. You'll know that that has happened when Brett McHarg takes over as moderator. Please keep your questions as brief as possible. We will cut you off if rambling occurs. Please do not put your hand up in the chat until we begin that period. All answers are, as I said, limited to 2 minutes each. Danny is our timekeeper tonight. She'll give a 10-second warning to persons who are at that point in their presentations, and then she will tell people when time has elapsed. Finally, we will hear brief closing statements for all of the candidates in random order. Those will last 2 minutes each. So with no further ado, we will move to the candidates themselves, and we'll start with the candidates for chair. The first candidate we will hear from is Art Schenkler. Who's going to unmute himself.
Hi, thanks, Kathy. And by the way, for the record, I did not say X, Y, and Z. You might have seen my head perk up when you mentioned that. Anyway, thanks for organizing this. Thanks for everybody who's here. As we discussed, I'm Art Schenkler, and I'm running for the position of chair. And if that doesn't work out, I'll be running for vice chair. I should mention that some people have asked me why I'm running for both offices. Well, I have to tell you, this seems pretty natural to me. I've been in DA leadership in one form or another for over 10 years. I've seen the organization grow by tenfold in terms of membership. And to some extent, I think I've been responsible for some of that growth. And I think I can continue to contribute to that growth, whether as chair or vice chair. These are leadership positions. We all work together. I've been on the XCOM for a number of years. It's a team effort. Whether it's chair or vice chair, I think we just want to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. But as most of you know, I hope, I'm currently the international vice chair. But to give you a little bit of background, I've been a Democrat all my life. I was stuffing envelopes with my mother, and I'm sure some of you have heard me say that before. When I was 5 years old, I was working at she had us go into the factory gates to hand out flyers for candidates. And after that, when I grew up and became an adult, I worked on several campaigns as a volunteer and even as a staffer on a presidential campaign. We didn't win that one, by the way. Professionally, I've worked in Asia and Africa with refugees and all over the US working on infrastructure projects. And yes, I even worked on Wall Street for a few years. But since moving back overseas in 2001, I've been working on developing environmental projects in Eastern Europe. Some of my DA background, I started working with Democrats abroad in 2004 in Prague, where I spent weekends signing people up for FPCAs and helping them. And back then they really were postcards. They really were federal postcard applications in bagel shops and bookstores around the city. And I will say that since that time, I continue to stop people, whether it's at the airport, whether it's on the street, wherever, when I hear an American accent, and I hand them a vote from abroad card. That's really one of the most effective voter outreach messages that all of us can do. And it's that kind of thing that I believe in promoting, because that's the way we're going to reach all those millions of Americans who are still not voting. In 2011, I helped found the official country committee in the Czech Republic and served as the first chair with the estimable Julia Bryan as vice chair. In 2012, I moved to Serbia, where I now live, and continue to vote in New York. Since then, I've served as the international
10 seconds.
How many?
10 seconds.
Okay, thanks. Anyway, the point of all the experience that I've had over the years is that I've seen us make great progress, and I hope to continue to be part of that progress going forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Art. Next, we'll hear from Jazz Moore.
Okay, great. Hello and good day, everybody. And it's such a great honor being here today with even greater fellow candidates. And thank you, DA France, Germany, Spain, and the UK for organizing this very important event. I'm a red state, but proud blue Texas voter living in Zurich, Switzerland. My pronouns are they, them, and my name is Lidano Jazz Moore. Democrats Abroad's core mission lies in the fundamental right that every voice deserves to be heard, regardless of geographical boundaries. To me, the goal is clear: increase voter turnout and ensure that Americans living abroad exercise their right to vote in every election. As I see it, our mission extends far beyond party lines and political affiliations. It is about upholding the very essence of democracy itself. Well, so how do we do that? We must include efforts to increase outreach and engagement with the underrepresented, Black voters, young voters, individuals with disabilities. What is needed is an inside track. And I can offer this, and I can assure you that all of these issues are everyone's issue. And together, we can make the difference. First and foremost, we must harness the power of technology in a streamlined, easy, and inclusive way with a multifaceted strategy that embraces innovation, engagement, and collaboration. So let me tell you what I am really passionate about. Well, establishing robust communication channels, reaching out to citizens and targeted communities, dispelling any confusion or barriers to participation with timely, clear, comprehensive, and accurate information. I do strongly believe in the power of grassroots mobilization, but we have to clean out the weeds. We have to create a sense of camaraderie and shared purpose, creating a network of passionate advocates working together, driving voter engagement at all levels of our organization. We can do this by investing in local chapters and boosting local caucuses, empowering them with the resources and training needed to mobilize their communities effectively. And as international chair, I pledge to work tirelessly to forge partnerships with like-minded organizations, both within the Democratic Party and far beyond. We must employ a proactive approach to voter outreach, amplifying our message and ensuring that every American living overseas knows that their voice matters, because every voice matters to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jazz. I'm sorry, it's such a great name. I can't help but use it. So there you are. Plus it goes with your shirt. So there we are. Next, we'll be hearing from Martha McDevitt Pugh. Martha?
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, Democrats abroad, France, Spain, Germany, and UK, for organizing this forum tonight. I'm Martha McDevitt Pugh, a California voter in the Netherlands, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm running for international chair for a few simple reasons. 2024 is an election we must not lose. Human rights are on the line, starting with our most vulnerable communities. Republicans won't stop there. None of us are safe. Most importantly, I'm running because of all of you. As international chair, I will dedicate myself to your success. This incredible community of volunteer leaders inspires me every day. You are the gold and the engine of our success. 9 million Americans living powerful lives across cultures with all of our humanity and our different points of view. My story is just one of the 9 million. I came to the Netherlands because my wife is not a US citizen and our marriage was not recognized, which locked us out of US immigration. We mobilized LGBTQ Americans around the world to share their stories of being denied immigration rights, and we won. That's how I found DA and how DA found me, through my advocacy. I've had many roles at DA, from voter assistance, a country chair and a vice chair, leading a task force and a caucus, voter protection co-lead, and on the California state team. I'm currently your global DNC representative and on the board of the DNC LGBTQ caucus. So what will I do as international chair? Here's my promise to you. First, we will address our governance challenges. DA has had incredible success over the last few presidential cycles. It's time to put everything we have learned into practice, giving confidence to our country committees so we can succeed. We will plan out the next election cycle. We will have robust financial planning, accountability from the leadership to you, and regular reporting. We will measure our results and adjust as required. Together with you, we will plan the way forward. Second, we will support our local country committees. That's where we get to know each other, learn what motivates members, and how they want to contribute. The DA welcome starts at home. And our distributed organization is a strength. Ideas come bubbling up from the diversity of country committees, and we will help coordinate these ideas and help them spread. Last, we will get prepared. All our global teams and leaders need to be ready before the campaign season. We will have our global communications team in place, graphic design, voter assistance, help desk, advocacy, and study abroad. We will support our IT and data teams, and I believe in state teams and global caucuses, which provide an opportunity for so many of our volunteers to support our mission. We will build a global communication strategy that brings all of this together, where advocacy supports GOTV and the other way around. And I'm committed that we go forward together with renewed focus.
10 seconds.
And I'm looking forward to our conversation today. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Martha. Now we'll be turning to the candidates for vice chair. We're going to start with Jennifer von Esdorf.
Thank you, Kathy. Thank you so much to the DA France, Germany, Spain, and UK country committees for hosting this candidate forum and for everyone in attendance. The work that you and your volunteers do on the ground is critical for our shared mission of getting out the vote. Our combined energy, time, and commitment is crucial in the fight to preserve democracy and improve the lives of all Americans. Together, we can motivate and educate voters so they participate in increasing numbers, not only in presidential cycles, but all the way down the ballot every year, every election. I'm Jennifer von Esdorf, Texas voter living in Germany, and it would be a great honor to serve as International Vice Chair of Democrats Abroad. The role of Vice Chair requires a solid understanding of the work we do, from on the ground to the overarching structure and function. I'm confident that my unique experience and knowledge of the organization would allow me, with the chair, to help chart the direction we need for 2024 and ensure we can accomplish this daunting task. We must. It's been my pleasure to organize, strategize, and lead at every level of the organization, from my local chapter to a range of roles in our Germany Country Committee to my work as Global State Teams Coordinator, giving me the ability to step into the role of Vice Chair with a firm grasp of DA's needs, challenges, and opportunities, mobilizing motivated groups of volunteers by building trusting relationships, bolstering the lines of communication, honoring and appreciating the contributions and experiences of all of our volunteers is how I envision the Vice Chair helping to bring the organization together. This work is the natural extension of what I've been doing. Driving the formation of the innovative DA state teams is only one example. My attention to detail, as well as the affinity for creative problem solving and strategic planning, have helped me to spot and fill gaps in our strategy and workflows. As a cohesive team, the chair and vice chair can create a more inclusive and effective path forward, providing the necessary space to listen to the needs of our volunteers and brainstorm solutions together. In the words of John Lewis, freedom is not a state, it is an act. And I look forward to continuing to show up day after day to turn ideas into action. With so much crucial work to do, we must build on what we have accomplished and move forward without delay to ensure that the votes from abroad are the margin of victory in key races up and down the ballot. Thank you again for your time and for all that you do.
Thank you, Jennifer. And last but certainly not least, we'll hear from Steve Nardi. Steve?
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you, DA France, Germany, Spain, and UK for hosting this Meet the Candidates event. I'm Steve Nardi, a Michigan voter living outside of Toronto, Canada with my husband, Kevin, and I've been here for about 29 years. I found DA in 2012 as a volunteer with the Toronto chapter, and I was hooked. Since then, I've held many positions in DA Canada, culminating in 2 terms as chair. At the global level, I've been America's RVC and am a member of the Global LGBTQ+ Caucus Steering Committee. I know what it takes to run a country committee, and I know how the global organization works. I've been there. And what I also know is that volunteers are the lifeblood of DA. Everything we do, from the smallest to the largest things, comes from you. And I'm proud to be running with Martha as your leadership team because we agree on so much: valuing volunteers, fostering a positive culture, supporting all country committees, and most of all, being focused to get the job done. Working together, we can and we must exceed our 2020 record-breaking performance in 2024. We can build on past successes and create new innovative ideas. Let's close the loop between our on-the-ground efforts and the next day results available from the VFA dashboard, as analytics is key to success. Let's build a robust communications team, not only helping us understand ourselves, but also reaching the world. And let's coordinate our digital media strategy with country committee activities and our fundraising requirements. And we need to continue our Sunday Zooms, which provided much more than voter assistance. It was the space where volunteers met to be informed and rejuvenated. And let's break the silos that are keeping us apart. The state teams racked up impressive successes in legislative advocacy, which I experienced by testifying for DA at the New Jersey State Senate hearings on voter rights for overseas citizens. We won that battle, demonstrating the value of these teams. But silos are causing us problems. In 2022, Canada did no phone banking, feeling that the state teams had it covered. Despite my urging, we didn't call into California and New York, and the results speak for themselves. Speaker McCarthy owes his seats to representatives like George Santos, and these are real consequences. Let's work together in search of our common goal: ballots in boxes. And here's why I'm the right person to do this. In my professional career, I've led and motivated remote teams with global reach. My proven strategic and operational leadership skills have delivered results through empowering people. I'm a down-to-earth leader who takes things as they are while searching for improvements. Hospice Toronto's Loving Care was there for me and my partner when we needed it. Their work inspired me, and I've been a volunteer ever since. Through my 5 terms
10
as chair,
seconds.
I'm proud to have laid the foundation for their long-term sustainability. And there's only so much I can cover in 3 minutes, so I invite you to visit nardiforda.com to learn more. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And that concludes our opening remarks. We'll now move to the phase of our program where we have pre-planned questions that will be put first to candidates for chair, And then the next question to candidates for vice chair, alternating the positions that will be questioned and with randomized schedules for speakers. Our first question is directed to the candidates for chair. Our organization has learned a massive amount about get out the vote activities in the last two cycles, 2020 and 2022. Our performance in 2020 was stellar, but in 2022, it was less so. What are your specific plans for get out the vote in 2024? This is central to the position as chair and to our mission. So first we will have Jazz Moore.
Great. Thank you, Catherine, for this very good and very important question as well. Well, one of the most effective strategies for getting out the vote among us Americans that are living abroad is to implement a comprehensive and targeted approach. And by doing this, here are some key strategies that we have to consider. Well, first and foremost, we have to fill important vacant global team lead positions. I would also say that we have to look at this whole question from a different angle, from a different approach. Right now, currently, we cannot say we have a GOTV plan, but what we can say is we have a GOTV strategy, because a GOTV plan is something that develops in a collaborative way with the team leads, with the GOTV team lead. And I could absolutely, praise the fantastic work that, for example, Heidi Birch has done in the past years as well. So circling back again, here are some of the key strategies that we absolutely do have to consider. First and foremost, voter outreach and education. We also have to think about partnering with other organizations and collaborate with them. We need to build and spread our online registration tool called Vote from Abroad, as well as make sure that we have assistance for any kind of absentee ballot requests that are needed. Another thing that we could use in implementing GOTV strategies is offer virtual town halls and webinars, but not just virtual ones. We also need to use the opportunity to make them hybrid, to make them easy and accessible for everybody. What we also have to do is encourage Americans living abroad to become ambassadors within their own grassroots organizations as well, because there are so many opportunities. Is it through military? Is it through churches? Is it through
10 seconds.
country communities? And also social media campaigns, personalized communications, collaboration with embassies and consulates, and as well voter volunteer recruitment. Thank you.
Thank you, Jazz. And we'll hear now from Martha McDevitt-Pugh.
Thank you. Well, there's so much to say about what we can do in 2024 and what we must do. In 2020, we reached 500 million people through a whole variety of methods, but including digital outreach. And I think in 2024, we need to up that game and reach 1 billion people. So our digital ad strategy will be really important in that. And we do know how to find Americans. So we need to ensure that our country committees are having all the resources they need to grow. We have global presidential primaries in 2024, which are one of our best vehicles for growing our membership and for getting attention in the media and for bringing volunteers in. So those are all going to be really essential to have us meet or exceed our 2020 results. We also need to get to increase the number of volunteers. Jazz already mentioned how important it's going to be to fill our global teams and to make sure we have leaders in place. We now have 9 vacancies in global teams. We need to do everything we can to make sure that we make the match between the people who want to contribute to Democrats Abroad, who have the skills, and the roles that we have in place. And we need to be sure that all of our communication strategies and so forth are understood by everybody, so we're all heading in the same direction.
Great. Thank you, Martha. And last and certainly not least, we'll be hearing from Art Schenkler.
Oh, you can call me least, Kathy. Anyway, I'll start by challenging the thought that 2022 was less than stellar. Let's be clear, we focused on battleground states. And yes, Steve, maybe we should have focused on California, but they were not on anyone's target. And we did, we added places, we added Alaska, we added Oregon, to the states that we were reaching out to. I vote in New York. We're not in George Santos district. So I think when all is said and done, we will find that almost, if not half, if not more, of our members voted, which is actually pretty successful for a midterm election year. So one, I'd start with the challenging. Looking ahead to 2024, I always think about these things as 3 cups of voters. One is our members, the lowest hanging fruit. And we've successfully reached them with a combination of our Call Hub program, staffed by volunteers across the globe, as well as our emails out to them, as well as person-to-person contact through the country committees. The second pot of voters, cup, whatever, are people who voted but are not yet members of Democrats Abroad. And we made real strides in the 22 cycle of using the state voter rolls to reach out. I think we added 200,000 people plus to our database in outreach. What we need to do forward is a lot of the contact information for those people is not perfect. We need to improve that data so that we can reach out to that second group, i.e. all the people who voted in 2020, for example, but are not members of DA. And there's about 500,000 of those people. The third is that big one in the sky, the millions of Americans who have never voted from overseas. And
10
as Martha
seconds.
said, we need to increase our digital ads, and we need to focus as well on earned media, getting people on the airwaves, getting people in press,
Time.
whatever, to reach those voters and give them the message about vote from abroad. Thanks. You're on mute, Kathy. You're on mute,
Kathy, we're not
Kathy.
hearing you. Kathy?
You're on mute. So I am. I didn't think you wanted to hear me sneeze. Thank you. We're switching to our candidates for vice chair. And here's their question. What do you see as the role of the vice chair, both within and outside of the International XCOM? Besides assisting the chair, what projects and issues do you plan to focus on? And we'll start with Jennifer.
Thank you, Kathy. I think that the vice chair is a bridge builder, is someone who is there to help bring together all of the different things that we are doing. Democrats Abroad is probably one of the most diverse organizations on the planet. We are out here trying to do near impossible work, trying to figure out the rules for 50 different states. We're trying to work in different cultural contexts. We're working in time zones all across the globe. You need someone who can really see what is going on, spot gaps, be a listener, hear the problems, hear the issues, and bring people to the table together to find solutions, but also someone who is able to see the needs and to get ahead of things before they come up. I think that's something that we did with the state teams. For the first time ever, we really made this targeted effort to get out the vote in the primaries. We did call California, as everyone calling California, we called the districts that were needed. And that's what we worked on with the California state team, was these 10 critical districts. And we called them and we fought for them. And some of them we did win. And so I think finding new ways to go about doing things, helping to bring those ideas to the XCOM, helping to bring volunteers together, helping to bring initiatives together, being a good listener, and really then also making sure that those ideas get put into action and they don't just sit around and nothing happens. You need somebody who is a doer, who is really active, who is willing to, get out there and fight for these changes and be willing to see when we've made a mistake and to rectify it and go in a different direction. And I think that's something that I bring to the table, and with the
10
right
seconds.
we can really bring about a lot of positive change.
Great. Thank you, Jennifer. Now we'll hear from Steve.
Thank you. One of the critical roles for the vice chair is to be a sounding board for the chair. And I would view my responsibility first as working with the team, identifying how my skills can best serve the team. I would want to work on developing a framework for good governance and which supports our sustainability. I envision myself having active participation in the development of an operational budget, our GOTV strategy, our IT strategy, and I even have conference organizing skills. And I really do have the vision of reimagining our global meetings and the value that we get out of those. I also see the potential to facilitate providing opportunities for country committees to engage in more informal settings where we can nurture idea sharing and relationship building. And it can be an avenue to support challenges that are experiencing on the ground. And then within the DNC, critical to play a role in state advocacy and reaching out to the state parties, building on the relationships that others have been building over the last several years, because there's still a lot of potential that exists in working with the state committees. I will also be a strong support for our country committees and ensuring that their voice is heard when decisions are being made that affect the organization. We want to create a welcoming and respectful environment for all who wish to see us be successful in 2024. And I would keep a primary focus on sustainability, the stewardship of our resources, which are critical resources are each of you, our volunteers. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And that concludes our answers to that question. Now we'll be turning back to the candidates for chair again. Here's the question. If you have never been a country chair committee, would you be in the position to actually know the problems, demands, and needs of a country committee? Our country committees are very diverse, small and large, with varying organizational structures and practices. How specifically will you support them? And we'll start with Art.
Well, I have been a country chair, and I've even been a deputy RVC in the EMEA region. So I think I have some understanding of what goes on in country committees. And, you know, I've been in leadership for a while, and I've heard from country committees, and I've talked to country committees. I've even sat in on some of their AGMs and their meetings. I attend most of the regional monthly meetings for EMEA, certainly. I was sort of leading some of them for the Americas over the last 6 months when we had a vacancy there. Before Hope came on board. So I think I do understand what happens in country committees. And it's certainly important. What I do believe, and I think, you know, Steve said this earlier, and you know, this concept of silos, we need to get away from that. And that's really the job of the executive committee, the chair, the vice chair, et cetera, is to bring all these different elements together and make the decisions. You know, I don't expect people in Brazil to support get out the vote efforts in Germany or wherever. But that is what I expect the ExCom to be able to do, is to make the judgments about where we should be putting our resources, both money and time of volunteers. And that, I think, is what I have done over the last few years, and that's what I would hope to continue to do. Thanks. I hope that answered your question in part.
Thank you, Art. And now we'll go to Martha.
Well, like Art, I have led a country committee, 2 terms in the Netherlands as chair and 1 term as vice chair. So I have a sense of the work in the country committee, and I've led a country committee through 2 global presidential primaries. But I think the important thing that I have learned as both a DNC member and also listening and engaging with country committees since I announced my run for chair is that each country committee is unique. We do have small country committees and large country committees that maybe share some of the same characteristics, but we are in so many different countries around the world. The challenges, the demographics, they are all really different in each country committee. So I think it's really important that we recognize that and understand that. As a DNC member, when I travel, I always try to visit country committees. So I've been to places like Australia, where not very many people visit, and to France and wherever it is, to learn and to engage and to find out what their issues are. And I've had a lot of conversations to listen recently to find out what the challenges are of the country committees. And I think that we need to recognize that what we have learned and what we know about one country committee is not necessarily going to apply somewhere else. So we need to get that complex understanding of what's at play in different country committees. What are some of the common challenges that we can solve as leaders of the organization at a global level? And we need to find out the ways that we can provide the infrastructures, the plans, and everything that country committees need to be successful. The country committees have their own, challenges. They have their own structures. They have their own cultures they're working inside of. And all of them need to be supported in a way. And of course, we have regional vice chairs that can do that, but I think we also have a lot of differences across our different regions. And so we need to be sure that we don't think we have the answer to everything, but I think we need to have structures in place to make sure that we are listening closely to what's happening in country committees and addressing their issues.
Thank you, Martha. And last but not least, Jazz.
Yes, thank you very much for this very important question as well. And I think that probably was mostly directed towards me anyway. So I'm very happy to answer that. Well, I have not been a country committee chair, but I have been the interim secretary in a time when right before the midterms, where everybody said, oh, you should not be doing that. You're never going to succeed. You're going to fail in this. And you know what? I did not fail. I actually did surprise everybody with all of my work ethic and efforts in almost 24/7 being here for the community. But also not being a country committee chair has given me a great opportunity to early on, even before I was even thinking about campaigning, listening to our country committee leaders and recognizing and realizing that every country committee is different. Some things work better there, some things don't. And it gave me so much insight communicating one-on-one during this whole period of time, even as international secretary, to figure out what works and where the communication barriers are. And just circling back a little bit of people might questioning, is this person really good enough to be our international chair, even though they have not been a country committee chair? Well, I'll tell you a little bit about my backstory. I grew up with a German Nazi grandfather who always told me, you're never going to be worth anything. You're never going to make it in life because of the color of my skin. So time and time again, I had to prove my worth and that I could do anything that I put my head forward to do it. And with me, you definitely have a candidate who works tirelessly around the clock, making sure that every voice is heard, every voice is acknowledged, and that we have a shared inclusive communication, because without that, we're getting nowhere in this organization. So yes, every country committee has their own issue, but again, I've been listening prior to campaigning. So I
10
exactly
seconds.
have a feel for what is going on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jazz. And that concludes our responses to this question. We'll be moving back to the candidates for vice chair now. Here's the question. Many country committees are having issues with recruiting new volunteer leaders and retaining experienced ones. What concrete actions do you propose to improve and expand our volunteer engagement? And we'll be starting with Steve.
Hi, thank you. This requires that we have an approach. We've got to look at the organization for its long-term sustainability. Retaining volunteers is one of the biggest challenges, keeping them engaged between election cycles, particularly those who tend to come out in the presidential cycle and you may not get their attention in the midterms. I envision that we develop a comprehensive leadership training program that's ongoing, that covers FEC, and teaches leaders how to motivate volunteers, good governance best practices, communication strategy, media engagement. And on our listening tours, people have suggested using short video clips for training, which I think is an awesome example for how we can reimagine how our training can reach and be more effective for a wider audience. There's also a document on the wiki that nobody told me about when I was elected chair of Canada. It was outdated at the time, but even at that point, it still was a valuable resource. And it's called the DA Handbook. And it's actually quite comprehensive. It has not been updated since 2012. I would prioritize that because that became an invaluable tool, even though there was some outdated information. But as a country chair, it helped me tremendously. And then we need more opportunities for our volunteers to connect. Two Purdue professors did a survey of DA Canada members last year. And on the report, not buried, but like on the last page of the report, there was a key sentence there. And it said that DA Canada members are more inclined to engage in our activities when they have had the opportunity to socialize, to bond, to get to know each other. And we need to be encouraging our country committees and our chapters that just social engagements will actually help them build their long-term sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And now we turn to Jennifer.
Thank you, Kathy. I think one of the things that we have to do is listen. We need to set up tools for getting feedback from our volunteers. When we have onboarded someone, we should then ask them, how did that process go? What barriers did you have? What went smoothly for you? If we have a volunteer who is considering leaving the organization, we should have an exit interview with them. We need to listen to the people who are doing the work and figure out what it is that we can do to support them. We should regularly be getting feedback in many different forms from our volunteers on the ground at every level, not just leadership, but people working at the chapter level, people really out there on the street handing out the VFA cards. And then we need to offer space to come together and to talk about how we can make these improvements, as many of those in person as possible, because that's where we build relationships. That's where we build trust. That's where we build rapport and we see each other's strengths. And I think the other side of that is then we will create a more positive, more respectful atmosphere where everyone's voice is heard. Because I know we have lost volunteers because they were frustrated with just the tone of some of our meetings and some of our interactions. We can do better. We can be respectful of each other. The other thing we can be respectful of is volunteers' time. And we need to make sure that we are not reinventing any wheels. We have amazing resources that different country committees have created, and we must pool them together so that someone doesn't have to do things that have already been done. One example of this was streamlining the process of voter assistance, getting all of our volunteers into Intercom. In 2020, we were working off of spreadsheets, country by country.
10 seconds.
We could put everybody together so that we could be a community, we could help each other, we could save time by having all of our resources in one place. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. And now we'll be turning to a question again for the candidates for chair. This question was also asked to our candidates for council on Wednesday. Without using any metaphors about toothpaste or weeds, would you update our current risk management policy with regards to FEC compliance? And if so, in what way? How do you intend to ensure that any changes are in compliance with FEC regulations? And we'll start with Art.
Sorry, me again. I wasn't expecting to go first this time, but two things first. One, I want to say, Jennifer, thank you for correcting me on California. You know more about all that than I do. I thought we did, but anyway, thanks for correcting the record there. And two, Jazz, I just want to say, I've worked with you for the last, in my view, you are more than qualified to be chair. So as terms of FEC compliance, I would actively involve our council, both internal and as necessary, our external council, to look at what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, any changes that we're making, make sure that we are following council's advice. That's what they're there for. I worked in business and banking and all that stuff, and I always paid attention to what the lawyer said because I didn't want to go to jail. So that's important. At the same time, we need to get input from as many people as possible. We had this committee, Kathy, you know about it. You were the chair for a while. We need to continue that work to get input from people about problems. At the country committee level, I voted for that when it came up last year. I think it's a good idea so that we continue to get input about, problems that people are having at country level. As somebody said earlier, every country is different. We need to explore what works. Admittedly, we have to have one policy. That's kind of where the FEC, because they see us as one organization. But that doesn't mean that we can't take into account the differences in different country committees. So I think going forward, I think the FEC changes that we have actually gave us a good platform, not only at the global level, but at the country committee level. It established a dedicated website for
10
country
seconds.
committees, which allows them to raise, I think, more money from local donors. And two, it allows for partisan messaging, which we weren't able to do before. Saying, okay, thanks very much. Cheers.
Thank you, Art. And now we'll hear from Jazz.
Thank you, Kathy. It's a very interesting question. And for one, I'm not a lawyer. I once wanted to study law or medicine, but I took a completely different route. But I have quite a big understanding and interest also in the law per se. What is very important for me is that with our international council and the Council of Councils to work closely together what works with them within the law so that we can protect our organization and obey the law. What we also have to do is get everybody to the table, because we've been hearing a lot about transparency issues. Well, it's not that we don't have enough channels to communicate with, and it's not about not getting a sufficient information that are being spread or not being spread. The true issue here is that people have not been included at the table and have not been involved and have not had the opportunity to be seen or heard. And I think adding in the more diverse voices of the country committee councils as well, to open up the floor and have a broader understanding and a better understanding of what the issue is, to protect and our community and also to obey the law, is what we really do need. For what it's worth, I do think that these changes are good. We have to obey the law as well, but also I want to protect our organization, come what may, because if we don't have an organization, we don't have blue votes, and we need every single blue vote from all around the globe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jazz. And last but certainly not least, Martha.
Thank you. So I think this is a really important question. The question is about whether I would update the risk management policy. I have a background in risk management, so I would definitely bring a risk management mindset to everything that we're doing. And I think what's important here, and for some people who may not have been part of Democrats Abroad earlier, we changed our approach to FEC compliance in the last year. Democrats Abroad has been subject to FEC law for many decades and has tried different approaches, and now we have a new one. And that has had quite an impact on the way we do things and our country committees. So a couple of things that I think are important. One is that as I talk to country committees, they're still looking for an actual guidance document that tells them exactly what to do. So I think that has been promised. I don't think that's been delivered in a way that is to the satisfaction of a lot of our country committees. So they still have a lot of questions. So I think that guidance is an important thing that we need to bring. A law is always something that has to be translated into policy. And Democrats has done so in such a way that our policy is more strict than the FEC law. Of course, FEC law is not written for people who are living abroad. We have different circumstances. And I think that any policy would need to be assessed on a regular basis, checked, make sure it's still working, and identify if anything has changed. So usually a risk policy would change if there's been a precipitating incident, if something has happened. In our case of Democrats Abroad, we just got bigger and we raised more money and we decided to change our approach. The impact of that on a lot of country committees is it's really shut down their ability to fundraise. A lot of chapters and country committees were relying on cash donations, which were anonymous, small amounts, which were really able to fund a lot of their activities. And so that is something that still needs to be addressed inside of the
10 seconds.
organization. How can we be sure that we can still take the donations from people who don't want to pay by credit card, and what is actually possible in that space? I think that is definitely something we should look at with International Council in the next term.
Time.
Thank you, Martha. And now we'll turn to a different question, again, going back to our vice chair candidates. Here's the question. What would you do together with the chair of NextCom to build and improve our external communications, including digital ads? And what comms strategy do you propose for 2024? Would you try to work with the DNC on issues related to digital advertising? And we'll hear first from Jennifer.
Thanks for the question, Kathy. I think the most important thing that we can do before we determine our strategy for next year is to analyze the data from our digital ads this year to look and see where we have been most effective, what target groups are most effective. We also have done work with, not just social media platforms, but also with LinkedIn, and really dig through that data, get a group of people to sit down and tell us where we need to invest our money for the coming cycle, because we cannot just try everything. We now have several years worth of data to look at, and I think that will help us make the best decisions. We know that we can find new members with digital ads, and we know that we can also use the press, and like we did last year with earned media. So I think that the most important thing, first and foremost, is looking at the data, getting a plan, knowing exactly where we should be targeting, which audiences are most effective, where are we going to bring in the most hits to VFA. I think beyond that, we definitely need to work together with the DNC. They have a full team of people who are going to be working on messaging for the presidential election. We have an incumbent president. It will be important for us to follow their lead to make sure that we are amplifying the message that is coming from the DNC so that we can do everything that is possible to make sure we keep a Democrat in the White House next year. I also think it will be important for us to work together with the state parties to help promote our congressional candidates there, to really not just lose the progress that we have made helping to promote down ballot elections. Yes, it is a presidential cycle. We are going to have a lot of people who come on board and who want to participate, but we need to educate them
10
about
seconds.
the right to vote all the way down the ballot and explain to them why they should vote all the way down the ballot when they're able. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer. Now we'll hear from Steve.
Thank you. A comprehensive and a robust communications team is critical for this organization. My experience in 2020 as a country chair saw the value in weekly communications drops so that our team didn't have to develop messaging each week. We were being fed this by the organization. We could then pass that along to our chapters, where some of them, it's one or two people keeping the lights on. So they're not developing messaging, but they were grateful that we could say, if you can do one thing this week, take this one out of the three and you're good. We need to, our digital efforts in 2020 were very inspiring. I recall that there was even A/B testing of messaging. How did messages land? I mean, it was the first time that, and I have a bit of experience in digital marketing from an operations perspective, but to see this organization actually take a step in that direction was really exciting for me as a country chair. I think a digital strategy is going to be critical to reaching Americans around the world. I think we need to be solid in looking at alternate languages that reach markets that we may not be reaching with our messaging. And as far as working with the DNC, from my perspective, I recall there were challenges as far as messaging from global versus country committee, and some misunderstandings that needed to be worked out. And I'd be curious to see, does the DNC messages, I would want to see more of that A/B testing that we saw in 2020. Do the DNC messages land any more effectively than our messages that our own
10
communications
seconds.
people craft? Thank you.
Thank you. And now we will turn to a question for our candidates for chair. Here's the question. How would you describe the roles of state teams and global caucuses within DA? If elected, would you plan to appoint new chairs to some or all of the caucuses? And we're starting with Martha.
Hey, thank you for that question. So how would I describe the role of state teams and of global caucuses? So those are two different things. State teams are where we have the opportunity to organize ourselves around where we vote. Very specific differences between where we vote in different states. So it's really an opportunity to provide excellent voter assistance and address voter suppression with our voter protection teams, as well as expand access to the ballot. So those are very important. I think those are teams that are very important to our core mission, to our approach of supporting voters. So the role of the state teams is really supportive of GOTV. The role of global caucuses, global caucuses make us relevant for a lot of different constituencies. They make our organization more representative, and they give people places to volunteer and show allyship. So the global caucuses are really important, both in issue advocacy, as well as in growing membership, as well as ensuring that we are connecting with all the different communities that were relevant outside of our existing membership. So they're really important for membership growth. I think some of the issues that I would see around state teams and caucuses is they really represent an area of growth inside of the organization and where we've gotten more complex. And, we can only do everything when we have enough volunteers to do everything. So, we don't have 50 state teams that are fully ramped up. So we need to create an implementation plan over time so that we can be sure that we are hitting whatever is most important in our election year and making sure that we have the right resources and state teams in place. And I think there's a lot of synergy and collaboration that's possible between the global caucuses. I know that the LGBT caucus did the only GOTV fundraiser for Virginia in 2021. So there's definitely work that can be picked up there. As far as continuing or changing the leadership of these groups, I think we need
10
continuity.
seconds.
I think we need to keep our leaders in place so that we cannot stop. We need to keep going. And so we need to assess over time exactly how we want to organize things. But I think we have good
Time.
leaders in place and we should continue.
Thank you, Martha. Now we'll turn to Jazz.
Thank you, Kathy. Well, these are two very different teams that can, should, and absolutely have to work hand in hand together. What I do really want to point out is that we can only win the 2024 presidential election, defend and expand our Senate, as well as take back the House through the work of these teams. Because as Martha just pointed out, the state teams are fundamental in the work that they're doing in states issue-based topics, as well as the caucuses have a fundamental part of our Democrats Abroad structure. We're not going to win these races and this election through, oh, I'm a Democrat and I like us Democrats, or I like President Biden. We're only going to win this through issues, because this is the only way that we can also expand our outreach to people if we talk to those issues on an eye level, one-to-one. And on this note, I also want to absolutely praise the hard work, blood, sweat, and tears, as I know, from Jennifer van Estarf, that has done an amazing job. Also trying to get the global caucuses working together on those Meet the Candidate events. It was a great collaboration. Sometimes it worked better, sometimes a little bit less good, but the foundation has been laid out. Now we need to take this tool to the next step and expand our outreach. Thank you.
Thank you, Jazz. And last but certainly not least, Art.
You keep saying that, Kathy. I hope that message
did.
gets up, you know. Look, I agree with pretty much what everyone said. The thing that I would emphasize, and this is where they do come together, because I'm big on getting on earned media and getting people who can attract an audience. And, I was on an awful lot of candidate webinars last year, and thank you to Jennifer and the state teams for organizing them. But what I discovered or realized is that we were, we'd have 50 people, maybe another 50 people would watch it on Facebook, which always surprised me. If I was living in, I don't know, in Timbuktu or wherever, no offense to the people in Mali, wherever that is, I would be thrilled if I had an opportunity to be up close and personal with my candidate for senator. I'm thousands of miles away, and it would be great. And I was always surprised that there weren't more people. So I think that's one area that we really need to work on, because I think that's one way that the state teams and the caucuses, whether it's candidates or surrogates or whatever, we can really expand our outreach to the people, not only in our membership, but the people who are not voting. And that's, that is a communications challenge. And that's, again, I think that we're talking about candidates, we're talking about digital media, which is crucial, but we've also can't lose sight of the earned media, free media, whatever you want to call it, capacity to reach audiences that we're not reaching now. And I would second what Jazz said. Next year will be a Trump election, probably.
10 seconds.
To say it, but it will also be an issues election. And that, young people are becoming increasingly important, and they are focused on issues. They couldn't give a hoot about the Democratic Party
Time.
or Democratic candidates. So we need them all working together. Thanks.
Thank you, Art. Now we're going to turn to our last question, which goes to our candidates for vice chair. Here's the question. The global presidential primary is less than a year away. Alongside the chair and ExCom, how do you plan to support country committees to deliver successful GPPs and voting centers? We're going to start with Steve.
Thank you, Kathy. The GPP is one of our greatest opportunities to engage with Americans in our country committees. And even, if we're facing the potential of a single candidate come January, or we have multiples, we still need to plan to execute the GPP on the ground. You know, going back to the point I made earlier about how do our members engage, how are they motivated to get engaged further, is by these opportunities to socialize. When we do our GPP, for most country committees that do their one shot on Super Tuesday, that is a tremendous opportunity to have a social event for people to watch the results of Super Tuesday. It's a huge draw, and it's a very easy one to do. You know, even in a country like Canada, they've been able to execute global presidential voting centers in chapters all across the country. We have to be cognizant where we locate them. We have to be cognizant of cultural differences. As we learned in 2020, our Muslim Americans will not come into a bar to vote in a voting center. And Americans, even here in Canada, the ones that I've met at the voting centers, one of the reasons they come out is it's their one opportunity to drop that ballot in a box that they haven't been able to do since they've left the US. So it's that sense of kinship that brings them out. And it's the opportunity for earned media. I'm a huge proponent of earned media. We were incredibly successful in Canada in
10
2020
seconds.
with my initiative to lean in on the Michigan voters. So voting centers and GPP are just a huge channel for earned media opportunities for our countries. Thanks.
Thank you, Steve. And now we'll hear from Jennifer.
I have to say, I'm really looking forward to the GPP. That's one of my very fond memories. Right before we went into lockdown, it was one of the last things we were able to do was to have our 2 voting centers. And it was a phenomenal time to recruit volunteers, to recruit new members. We increased our chapter membership so much then, and our Germany membership, the numbers were just rolling in. And it's because this creates excitement, but we need to make sure that our volunteers are well prepared. We need to give them the resources that they need, checklists, materials, plenty of lead time so that they can prepare, offer Q&A sessions for anyone to come in if they have questions about the process. And then we need to be prepared to get out into the press, because this is our best opportunity to make it known that Democrats Abroad is here, that people can vote in person, that they have this amazing opportunity. We need to get into the local press. We need to get into the national media, television, print, get the word out that we are here and we are fighting for the right to vote. And, you know, let's just ride this excitement. And even if, regardless of how many candidates we have on the ballot, this is our one opportunity to put a ballot in a box in person. Let's make it a celebration. Let's make it a really wonderful time for all of our people to come together past the pandemic. We're getting together again, having these in-person events. And I think that it should be a real celebration of our right to vote. And we need to push that messaging out into our local communities, into our country communities, and get the word out that we can vote and that we're the ones out there fighting for this right. Thanks.
Thank you, Jennifer. That concludes the pre-planned questions portion of our program tonight. So I'm going to turn the moderator position over to Brett, who will be taking us through the rest of the program.
Thank you very much, Kathy. Can everyone hear me okay? My name is Brett. I am chair of DA UK. I live in London and I vote in Texas. Go Team Texas. We are now going to go to questions that will be brought to us by the audience here. And the questions will be answered by all candidates for a position. Unless your question is personally oriented to a particular person, such as, what did you mean when you said X? To ask a question, then please write * hand up in the chat and indicate which person it is for. We'll go in order of questions received in the chat. Please keep questions extremely brief, and we will cut you off if necessary. Please do not put your hand up in the chat until I give the go. So I apologize to Randy and probably to someone else who just put a hand up. Please wait until I say go. Sorry, and then all answers will be 2 minutes each, and Danny will let you know when you have 10 seconds left and you can cut off at exactly 2 minutes. And just to let you know, I will be using random name ordering, so wait until I call your name for each So go. And I'm on my iPad, so this is gonna be a little slow. I don't know when I said go, apology. Can someone tell me who the first one is?
So I think it's Sherry, according to the queue. Is
Sherry
that right?
Temple.
Okay. Okay, great. Oh, there we go. I see it now. Sherry, please ask your question.
Sure. This is for the chairs. What I have seen is many times after we get a new XCOM, that the new XCOM does not take on into account the knowledge and experience of the prior chair in particular. And I think that is one of the biggest mistakes I see in this organization, that we do not engage them. Several prior chairs still live abroad and they are no longer involved in Democrats Abroad, which I find really, really sad. I am pleased to see 3 former chairs on the call tonight, but that has not often been the case. So my question is, what do you plan to do to keep our current chair engaged should you become chair?
Thank you, Sherry. I will ask Art to answer the question first. You have 2 minutes
Well-
starting.
Well, our current chair is Candace Carriston, who I think did a great job over the last 2 years in taking us forward and getting us DNC funding and taking us to a professional level, building on the work of Julia Bryant, who's on my screen, who I've known for a long time and continue to talk to. And, you know, when the new XCOM took over, and just to keep, you know, and who else is on? Katie Solon, who I continue to talk to, and Ken Sherman, my bestest friend, who makes me look young. So I think, you know, I think it's important to have that continuity. That's kind of one reason why I'm running, is to provide continuity. Jazz is on the XCOM. You know, Jennifer's worked closely. Steve was, you know, Martha's DNC. You know, so it's important to keep that continuity going. And, you know, I spent a lot of time over the last couple of years talking to Candace about what's going on in the organization, being, as Steve's described it, a sounding board. And I don't think that's going to stop come June 11th. So I would hope not. And I think that's true, you know, no matter who selected chair, but, you know, we'll see. So.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Art. Next up is Martha.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. So, you know, a lot happens in Democrats Abroad in a 2-year period. There's always elections. And I have, you know, no doubt that our current chair has many learnings to pass on to the next chair. So I would really hope that she makes herself available. I mean, it's a big ask, but to have a good handover and to have time to be able to go through the various things that have had her attention, that have had the XCOM's attention, the learnings from that, and whatever plans are in place now going forward. But I think all of that, you know, like there are so many new relationships that take place in the course of a couple of years, and we really want to have a good relationship and continuity with so many stakeholders. So I would make that request, whether that is in a written document or whether that is in-person sessions. You know, I would absolutely make sure that we have a really good handover, you know, within the availability of our chair to do that. And also that we make sure that our chairs also have the opportunity to bring their skills and talents and learnings and all the wonderful things they have into roles inside of Democrats Abroad, you know, tailored for what they can provide and what they're interested in. I think that would be really important. So that would be my request. And it also applies to previous chairs. I've worked under several chairs in Democrats Abroad. They're all brilliant. They have so much to share. I've learned a lot from all of them. And it doesn't only happen at the time of a handover, but it happens ongoingly. So I would hope that our chair would also be available for all of us whenever we have questions.
Thank you, Martha. And finally, Jazz.
Thank you, Brett. And thank you, Sherry, for this very important question as well. And I am very, very fond in believing that we only could learn and proceed in what our forebears have done. We're building upon a very strong foundation of almost 50 years of Democrats Abroad, or even 50 years of Democrats Abroad, where it started off very, very small and it grew exponentially quickly, especially in the last 2 years. And these efforts have only been possible through all of the hard work that every volunteer has done prior to me. For me personally, as the candidate of international chair, I also have to try to forge my own pathway. The way that I always do that is I listen to my forebearers. For example, Art and Candace. Art and Candace have been great in roping me in as a part of the current international ExCom as well. And they've given me so much knowledge, and knowledge is always power, to move forward. Right now, even though we're candidates, I've been constantly asking, especially Candace, on certain topics and trying to be more involved and have more knowledge to then take on that responsibility. But I've also had previous conversations with past chairs as well, and also going into the nitty-gritty, reading old documents that we have available on our wiki, seeing what they have done. That part of information is also crucial. So not just listening to what has been said, but also digging deep, searching in the web and reading it for my own eyes. To forge my own pathway. So it is very, very instrumental that we listen to our peers, take it on, and also still collaborate afterwards, after a transition has happened. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jazz. And next up with questions for the chairs is Beth Landry.
Thank you, Brett. Thank you, everybody, for this forum today. My question is, there is a very timely opinion article today in the New York Times titled, "The Real Threat to Freedom is Coming from the States." As Maryland's team lead, I spent countless hours earlier this year tracking down dozens of bills, about 75 or 80 bills printed here in the General Assembly, and coordinating witness testimony for specific bills. And all of us know this is only further validation, that opinion article, of what we already know. Concretely, what organizational resources do you commit to supporting state-level legislative advocacy, and how will you ensure that this remains a priority? Will you testify for hearings and/or collaborate with state parties to advance policies?
Thank you, Beth. This is a question for the chairs, and randomizing, I have Martha coming up first this time. So Martha, can you, 2 minutes?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Beth, for that question. There's really a lot to that question. I think the first thing is that we see that we have gridlock in Congress and that there's nothing moving forward in terms of the kind of legislation that we would like to see. And Republicans have a strategy of bringing in state level legislation where they are in charge in very many states, which may not be good for us, let's say, that may be issues that we want to engage on. However, it is distributed across many different states. And frankly, we are not big enough or set up enough to go after every issue and after every bill. So very important point that you're raising here. I think I would prioritize in particular anything around voting and voting rights. I think you're pointing to that because I know you've been involved in Maryland in terms of getting better ballot access here. I think those kinds of bills are things that we absolutely have to be on top of. And I think that it's also an opportunity for our state teams to look and see where there's opportunities to engage and to educate around specific pieces of legislation. There's a lot of state legislation now that is targeting specific communities, right? That is actually, not only suppressing the vote, but really putting lives at stake in the Black community, in the LGBTQ community. And it's so much for all of us to track. But I think the bottom line is to look at how all of those bills are creating victims and are being used as a wedge issue and as a way for Republicans to mobilize our voters. And we need to have very strong communication strategy and messaging around all of it, because it can be so confusing with all the different laws that are out there right now. And they're really specifically targeted. There is no issue around trans kids participating in school sports. There really isn't much going on there. It's really an attack on healthcare. in our country. So we need to be able to ensure that we understand what a lot of these bills are about. And we need to focus ourselves on the ones that are core to our mission. And then we need to grow our organization, more volunteers. We need to make a match between the work that we want to do and the amount of people that we have to do it. So I think that there's a lot there
10 seconds.
that you're talking about that will inspire people, that will bring volunteers in. And I think that's really opportunities for us to grow over the coming years. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Next up is Jazz.
Can the question be repeated, please, again?
Beth, could you repeat the question?
Let me come off mute. Sure. There is a very timely opinion article today in the New York Times titled, "The Real Threat to Freedom is Coming from the States." As Maryland's team lead, I spent countless hours earlier this year tracking dozens of bills in the General Assembly, all electoral related, that's an addition, and coordinating witness testimony for specific bills. And articles like these are only further validation of what we as Democrats abroad already know. Concretely, what organizational resources do you commit to supporting state-level legislative advocacy, and how would you ensure that this remains a priority? Will you testify for hearings and/or collaborate with state parties to advance policies?
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you very
Go
much.
ahead, Jazz.
Yeah, thank you very much, Beth, for repeating. So as we know, there are 9 team lead vacancies. So this also gives us a great opportunity to add one more team to the fold, a legislation coordinator, because this is something that is really lacking within DA, because as you're pointing out, there are so many bills on the table and it's very hard for us to keep track of all of it. Having a team like that could also be very enriching for our state teams, for our caucuses as well, to advance on those cases. So a short answer also to your question on if I would be willing to testify, yes, I would. I have enough courage to do so, and I do not shy away to do so as well. But one thing that is very, very important for us as an organization is that we advance on what has been built up in the last 2 years with so much energy and effort through Candace Carrison, the collaboration and the mutual trust as well with other state parties. Working closer with them will help us strategize and also finalize our push forwards to being heard and being recognized. Thank you.
Thank you, Jazz. And finally, Art.
Hi, thanks very much, Beth. Brett, you and I were sitting down with the Maryland State Senator last weekend, and we raised these issues about voting and voting access that the Maryland team has raised. So I think this is truthful. This is critical, particularly I think, as Martha said, to focus on issues that affect us as voting. Even though I don't vote in Ohio, I was born there and I sit in on the Ohio team meetings. There are some issues that came up. There was a bill passed that shortened the time after the election day from 10 days to 4 days that ballots could be received, not just overseas ballots, but domestic absentee ballots. And we're working with as Jazz just said, working with the Ohio Democratic Party, Liz Walter, who's from my hometown, Akron, to work on these issues as well as get out the vote. There's some issues in Ohio coming up. There's an abortion rights issue that's going to be on the ballot in November. And there's another election in Ohio in August. So I think it's really crucial. And I don't usually talk about my donations, but one of my CARES Act, American Rescue Plan refunds went to the New Jersey effort, which was a great success by all the people who worked on that. John Baumlin, Trish Augustine, Hamilton, who worked on that for years, reversing the Republican effort to limit our ability to vote in down ballot elections. I see Kathy's on my screen, hoping to do the same in New York so I can eventually vote for governor and mayor and everybody else in New York. So these issues are critical, and what resources, whatever it takes, because at the end of the day, these affect our votes. And that's what we're about, is getting out the vote. So thanks.
Thank you, Art. Next up in the queue is Will Prescott with a question specifically for Steve Nardi.
Yes, thank you for holding this Thank you for holding this. Steve, you resigned as the regional vice chair for Americas midway through your term. And I'm wondering if you could tell us what's changed that you think you're ready for to serve on the Global ExecCom again. Thank you.
Thank you, Will, for a very good question. And I'm going to do my best to answer this in 2 minutes because there's there's a lot to say. When I stepped down last June, I had no intent to reengage for office, and my philosophy is I don't need to burn down the house on my way out the door. But to honestly answer the questions is going to have to reveal some painful experiences for me with this XCOM. When Kevin was sold on me becoming candidate chair, it was expected a part-time position. We went to one person, one vote. It became full-time, but we made it work. When COVID came, Kevin runs he's the leader for the Canadian division of a global retailer with 200 stores and 2,000 people's lives that he's responsible for. And I couldn't be there to support him at critical moments as he's shutting down offices and laying people off because I was focused on GOTV. He respected that because he valued the work that we were doing and what we were accomplishing. The RVC role was actually supposed to be a little less demanding and a little bit more quality of life. During my time on the XCOM, I did not find support in my role as the RVC. My first question received a response of, well, if you had supported my campaign. And there was more than one person on the XCOM that seemed to judge their support for you based on whether you had supported them. I had the chair had only one call with the RVCs as a team in the 13 months I was an RVC. I had 2 one-on-one calls with the chair during those 13 months. This is not support. Ideas, suggestions that were floated would receive, that's a great idea, that would go nowhere. And Kevin had, when he saw that the decisions with the FEC were going against my values, and the position it was putting me in, he put his foot down and said, our marriage is more
10
important.
seconds.
Had I had any idea that the XCOM would ignore the charter and leave that seat vacant for 8 months, and 8 months later appoint the person that they named in June? Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. So next up is Bob Vallier. Can you let us know whether it's for chair or vice chair? Because we're not.
Well, it's for chair, really, but anybody can answer it, depending on how much latitude you want to give. So I wrote this out so I don't blather on, which I sometimes tend to do. I'm going to stop doing it right now. It asks you to sort of revisit and develop some answers that you gave earlier to previous questions in the first segment. Here's the question. We set down various markers in 2022, goals to meet in terms of, for example, driving members and non-members alike to use votefromabroad.org to request their absentee ballot. We set down goals to increase membership, etc. There were a whole bunch of them. But when we look at the available data, and it is available, it's on the wiki, I will gladly put the link to it in the chat box if you wish. When we look at the available data from Vote From Abroad, which is our tool, we see that the traffic on VFA in 2022 was about half of that of 2018. Let's compare apples to apples, 2022, 2018 midterm years, and at nearly twice the cost. And we also saw, after the LVD was done, that membership has declined this year for the first time that I can remember. It would seem then that certain goals were not met. One might be tempted to explain this away by saying that maybe voters went to FVAP, or that we need to wait for the full data set from the EAC, but I'm not sure that that's an adequate answer. In fact, I think that's a dodge, because all of our messaging, all of it, and all of our visible assets direct people to go to Vote From Abroad. That is our tool. That is where our metrics come from. I'd add parenthetically that one might want to say that our LVD cleanup was so good this year that we actually had a net loss, but that's not a particularly good argument because that would mean we've been artificially inflating our numbers up until now. But here's the question. What factors, whether they be internal decisions and strategies or externalities, do you think contributed to this data outcome in 2022? And how can we mitigate it in 2024, or more precisely, since we want to compare apples to apples, 2026? So to be clear, I'm asking for a diagnostic and a prognostic. Thanks.
Thank you, Bob. I hit random, and Art, you are coming up first. So
Hey, thanks, Bob. You've raised this before, and I think
have.
one, I've responded to you before. I think if you look at the data, you will find that, yes, a lot of people did vote without going through vote from abroad. We started tagging people as voted in 2022. And as I've said before, only 60% of those are also tagged with VFA. So if we extrapolate from those numbers, I think we reach a number of almost 100,000 people in the database voting. We've also looked at a couple states. I think we only have the voter rolls from Alaska and North Carolina, and they show an increase in votes from overseas when compared with 2018. So as I said earlier, I'm not sure it was the disaster that you paint. And we will continue to analyze the data as much. I see Meryl's on the call, as much as we can to determine what the real results were. People vote differently now. California, several states, because of COVID and everything else, are sending ballots out directly, which they weren't doing before COVID. So I guess I would question your premise. So I'm not sure. And I think, we did a lot of good things. We had more call hub than we'd had before. And I think we've shown statistically, Sherry's on the call, statistically, that call hub really works in terms of increasing the percentage of people voting. And I have to add one thing because I missed it when we were talking about the transition. Julia Bryan, who's looking at me from the screen, did a great transition memo talking about all the things that were in place. So in addition to sort of, conversations with chairs, she did a great job of putting it all down on writing.
10
And
seconds.
my mantra, if you put it down in writing, there's a 100% increase in the chance that it will actually happen. That goes for everything we do.
thank you, Art. Next up is Martha.
Great, thanks for that question, Bob. So there's a couple of different parts to it. So looking at the indicators that we have about our performance. So one of them is visits to vote from abroad. And we saw that traffic was down in 2022. And of course, we want our traffic to go up, and that we didn't see that. The second one is we had a drop in membership. So you're asking what factors contributed to it. And I just want to first of all call Art on what he just said about Bob's assessment being that we had a disaster. I don't think Bob described a disaster. I think he described something that is occurring in the data that we need to analyze and understand. And I think the only way we get better is not just by talking about our successes, but look and see where we may have failed, where we might have left something on the table that we could have brought. So I think if we saw that our traffic was down in 2022, we didn't need to wait till the end of the year to see that. I think there was a lack of tracking on a monthly basis where we were versus 2018 and then adjusting the plan. I think that was one thing. There's two ways that we get out the vote. One is calling the people we already know with the phone banking. So that was definitely in place. I'm not sure there were enough volunteers. That's something to address in the future. The other thing is expansion. And expansion of the vote has a lot to do with digital ads. And my understanding is that the digital ads need to be planned well in advance and need to be deployed early and at the right moment. So for example, we need to be planning our digital ads now for 2024. We need to be understanding what's going on with the platforms, what are the best ways to apply different strategies in different countries and all of that. And my understanding is that in 2022, some of that happened a bit late, which would suppress the ability to be able to expand the electorate. So I think that's part of it. As far as why the cost went up, I just don't have enough insight into the data.
10 seconds.
I'm glad to hear that there's an assessment being done. But I think that, sometimes we have not the outcome we want, and we need to study that. And there's still an opportunity to do that for 2022.
Thank you, Martha. And finally, Jazz.
Great. Thank you, Brett, and thank you, Bob, for the question. Well, understanding and interpreting data is very, very crucial, as everybody on this call today knows. Having that said, 2018 was also a reaction of Trump. And I also know that we've cleaned up our membership data, and a lot of people have moved back during the pandemic. And this is something that we cannot overlook. Also to that, also more states have their own sites where people go to, where people can use and also should use in some cases as well to have the correct information. As Art also just said, we've had the great opportunity of using some of the voter rolls as well. And that gave us even more data to work with. And I think we're probably going to receive even more information on that. But also having that said, when talking about mitigating, I think we do have to make sure going into 2024 that we do everything in a very, very timely manner so that information, advertisement, communications internally as well as externally goes out early on, way much earlier than during 2020, 2020, let's say, last year, so that we can raise those numbers. And well, yes, costs went up. Costs everywhere have gone up throughout the world. But there's one thing that I also would like to point out with engagement. We have received 300,000 grant from the DNC to up our game as well. And that is a lot of money. And the International XCOM currently, they've given a lot of these countries a lot of money to also do some of these efforts on advertising on Facebook and such. Not every country committee was able to really fulfill that task. There were probably certain communication barriers on how to, or further assistance needed, or there was simply just a lack of time. So if we also are lucky enough to receive another grant like that, I would definitely make sure that we start early on with messaging, because if we start early on, it probably also will be a little bit more cheaper.
10 seconds.
Thank you very much.
Just to be clear, a significant portion of that grant was for human capital.
Thank you, Bob. Okay, next up is Randy Weitzner. If you could let us know which group of candidates you're aiming your question at, and go ahead and ask your question.
It's really for everybody, and it's more a comment than a question because I don't want to take up time for people answering. So I'm sorry that I jumped in so fast. I did type it in because I didn't want to mess it up. So I just want to read from this. Each and every candidate talking today has provided outstanding information which can move this organization forward. What I want to say is that whoever wins, every candidate here should plan to work with the new leadership in a cooperative manner, much as Sherry was commenting on and the kind of information that Steve had supplied. Let's not stoop to the lowest common denominator, please, and pick up our toys and go home angry and disgruntled. Democrats Abroad needs all of these ideas to evolve, and whether you get elected as a leader or not, each of you has fabulous skills and talents to bring to this organization. And as an avid GOTV volunteer, I want all of your ideas and all of your time. So if you don't get elected, call me, because I need people to help me and I need your help. So that's just something that I wanted to add, because the politics of this organization, sometimes we deal in politics every day, and the politics of this organization can be, what's a nice word, unpleasant. So I would just like us to work together as much as possible. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Randy. We're not opening questions up to everyone, so I'm going to just select the vice chairs for now, and if the chairs want in a later question to maybe respond to yours, that's their prerogative. So if I could just have Jennifer, would you like to respond to Randy's statement?
First off, thank you, Randy. And I love working with Randy. And do you know what? I've thought a lot about bringing us together as an organization and how we deal with this, with strife, with politicking, and whatever it is that goes on in our organization that is a barrier to doing the work. And I'm a huge fan of Brene Brown, and she talks about Teddy Roosevelt's "Man in the Arena" quote, where we are in the arena together, fighting together, blood, sweat, and tears. And the people in the arena, the people doing the work, whoever is willing to do the work, come get in the arena with us, get your hands dirty, and you have a place in this organization. Don't be a heckler. Don't sit up in the cheap seats and yell down, do this or do that. Come down, do the work. Anybody is welcome. Everybody is welcome. We need everybody. We need people who are brand new. We need people who have been around for, as many years as possible. We need every single perspective, because the work that we do is so complex. And Randy and I have also talked about this, that it's just basically a nearly impossible task, but we do it anyways. We get out there every day and we fight this good fight together, and we find ways to make this insanity work of trying to help people in all corners of the earth, in all different languages and all different time zones, voting in every single state with all kinds of issues, but we do it. We could do it better, and we need everybody to do it. So if I'm the vice chair, I'm gonna work with anybody and everybody. If there's an issue, come and talk to me. I'm open. I can, can take
10
criticism.
seconds.
I just want us all to do the work together because people's lives are on the line and we need to show up as a team to get the job done. Thanks, Randy, for all you do.
Thank you, Jennifer and Steve.
Thank you, Brett. Randy, thank you for the question. I make a promise to you that if I am not successful in this election, I will not pick up my toys and go home. As I started to allude to the reasons as to why I'd stepped down from RBC, that didn't mean that I disappeared completely. I was quiet for some people, but I was actually still active in Canada, fulfilling my role as the past chair, which is a role that I believe is crucial for the sustainability of the organization. We have to stop the dismissing of previous experience. We need to bring experience along. I've served as past chair, both in my role as from Chair of Canada with DA and also with Hospice Toronto. And I view it as a responsibility to ensure the sustainability, the moving forward of the organization so that I am a resource to the current chair. I am not the bus driver. I am just sitting on a seat on that bus. And when they need to know the backstory, when they need to know the history, I am there to provide that so that they as a leader make informed decisions, but it's their decisions. So yes, back to your question, Randy, I promise you, I won't pick up the toys and go home.
Thank you, Steve and Randy. Very good question. Next up is Andrew Seitz with question for the chairs.
Hi, thanks. I join everyone in thanking for those hosting this. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Good, thank you. I'm asking this question as counsel to the chairs because I'm deeply concerned, as I think many are, and I just want to pull the rabbit out of the hat on this FEC issue. I want to preface it by saying that as a lawyer, I engaged in what are known as privileged and confidential discussions with other counsel, including international counsel and other lawyers involved in what I would just describe as frank discussions, but I'm not at liberty to disclose them. My question now is, it seems we have three alternatives. One, steady the course, go ahead and do what we've decided to do, for better or for worse, implement and move on, which requires full compliance by all country committees. Two, get a second opinion, whatever cost that is, and that can include the unfortunate circumstance that I've had in my own career of getting the same opinion and still having people unhappy. And then do you pay for a third opinion or a fourth? And where do you draw the line and which group of lawyers do you trust? Three, do you just roll the dice? And let's go back to what lawyers call the status quo ante. Let's put the toothpaste back in the tube, to use the popular metaphor out there. What are the consequences if you do that? What if it turns out that what we've been told is true? What if it turns out that there's enormous cost increases in our D&O insurance, political exposure? We can all write the script of the Republicans when foreign, you guess who funded this from overseas money is pouring into the Democratic ranks. Where do we go from here? Which of those three options do you see?
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. These are for the chair. And Jazz is first up on my list. So Jazz, would you like to answer Andrew's question?
Yes, thank you very much. And thank you, Andrew, for quite an informative and packed question there. So I personally would go for a mix out of 1 and 2. Currently, I do know that in regards to number 2, there have been inquiries with outside counsel as well to see if the information and the policy that has been put in place for now is working or is valid or is legal. For what I have understood in these conversations, it is. So we do need to maintain the course and staying compliant as an organization as well, because again, the security of our organization and security of protecting our blue votes is of utmost importance. And since you have also just spoken upon the raise of D&O insurance and so on, there's one thing that I do want to point out is that everything that we use within Democrats Abroad, our website, the call hub, the insurance that covers us, and so much more is being paid by Global, by everybody's donations. And we have to really make sure that everybody really understands that. So it's not like this country committee is doing this and they keep the money and they do this and this and that, and they do this and this and that. It's all of us together. We're all in the same boat and we all have the same goal in front of us, getting out the vote and making sure that everybody at the end really does cast their vote. But we only can do this if we pull together on one string and make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Jazz. Next up is Martha.
Yeah, thank you, Ed, for that question. So, I think that as an organization, we invested enormous resources last year in defining and starting to implement and put in place a new FEC approach. And when you provide resources for something, you need to get the most out of those resources. So I think we know that we are in a new direction in terms of our approach for FEC. I don't think that we start all over again. But I do think that if you're talking about stay the course, I would want to be really clear what that course is. I mentioned previously, there's no guidance yet for FEC. There's a policy. The policy marks many things that we must do that are linked to the law. It links some additional things that Democrats Abroad has decided to do in terms of how we want to manage our risk. I think that that's really important, but I think that we need to have a holistic view of exactly what it means for everybody at a country and chapter level. I think there's still a few clarifications that are needed there. Whether that involves counsel and so forth, I think, we do want to be sure that what we're doing, that we're properly translating the law into our processes and procedures. So we would want to consult with international counsel and get, or with counsel, outside counsel, to get a view into that. But I think the important thing is that we really clarify what the course is that we're on. We clarify where there is room in the law to do things in different ways, and then we make decisions, and that's where we stay the course. We make decisions about how we're going to do things. And as I've said earlier, there's more room in the FEC law than Democrats Abroad is using right now. I think, like any policy, we should revisit it every year and check and make sure that it's working for us. And right now we're losing out on donations because of the particular way that we are implementing this policy. We need to confirm or change that. I don't think that that is going to take a lot of resources to do that. But I think it's important that we do so.
Thank you, Martha. Art.
Hi. Well, I think we not only should, but we need to stay the course and move forward. I'm pretty sure there is a pretty detailed guidance for country committees about what they should be doing and how they should be doing it. It's been made available to them. As Jazz said earlier, I'm not a lawyer, but I was the international treasurer, so I do have, for several years, so I do have some familiarity with the FEC guidance, and I understand why we changed from what we did. I think there was an opinion gathered by another lawyer, which basically agreed with the interpretation by our external counsel from Sandler Reef. And as I said earlier, I just want to emphasize another couple of things. That the real goal of the FEC guidelines is to make sure that donations are transparent, so that people know who's donating to who, and to limit those donations in amount. And third, which is particularly relevant to us, is to make sure that non-Americans are not donating or infiltrating U.S. political campaigns. So I think the policies that we have adapted are focused on addressing those issues, that recognizing that our country committees are not independent political committees and that they need to be within the whole FEC registration process. And I think that's what we've done over the last year. And as I said earlier, I think it actually presents opportunities for people. Somebody mentioned, cash donations and, they used to be anonymous. Well, that's the whole point. And yes, I know there's an exception in FEC guides, but that's the whole point, is to try to make donations that are not anonymous. That's what the FEC is looking at. And particularly in our case for donations, which could be from non-Americans. That's what we're trying to do by documenting it. But again, I would say, you know, a lot of country committees, they now have dedicated websites, which from my experience as treasurer and a fundraiser over the years,
Time.
actually
I'm sorry.
increases the amount that you can
Thank you,
raise
Art.
from your local donors. That's it, thanks. Go
Yeah,
forward.
we will be ending the question
Multiply.
period in 5 minutes, so I would urge
Yeah, I
the
understand, thanks. Chair.
askers, the questioners to ask brief questions. Malika, can you ask your question for the vice chairs?
Yes, I think the vice chair position is very important. I see Kenton and Emily, how they move charge ahead, and I think it's because he has a dynamic vice and they work well together. It's a good synergy. So my question is that for Steve and Jennifer, Steve, I was gonna ask the same question as Will, you know, that you stopped at a certain point, and Jennifer, you have kids and a job. Can you see this through? Can you get the work done with your chair? And if you don't end up with the chair you may want to have, what happens?
Thank you. Steve.
Thank you very much for the question. First, let me answer, I guess the second part is I'm pretty clear. I'm in this race with Martha McDevitt Pugh. My values and my principles are very closely aligned to hers as far as leadership. And I am excited about the possibility of what we can bring together to bring our organization to new heights and amazing successes in 2024. I am in it through the completion. I didn't get to fully talk about, you know, the situation before, and hopefully I'll get a chance, and maybe I'll just wrap that up in my close. But it is a tremendous amount of time. And what I respect with Martha is that she's got a true commitment to valuing volunteers. Each of us, we're our greatest resource. We know that. Without each of us at this table, we don't get the work done. But we need to respect the individuals. We need to respect the capacities of our country committees at any given time. And yes, I will. I'm there for the whole duration.
Thank you, Steve. Jennifer.
Thanks for the question, Malika. I mean, obviously with the gender balance, the only way that I get to run is if Jazz or Art win, and I would gladly serve with either of them. They have my full support. We are really share a common vision for the organization. Yes, I am a mom. I work, and I have been here showing up every day for the past few years, working, busting my butt for this organization, and I love doing it. It is truly something that I enjoy. It is a passion, and I am going to keep showing up, and I am going to keep doing it day in and day out so that we can get out the vote, because we have to. Like I said, people's lives are on the lines. The elections that we will help decide are going to affect people's lives in a very real way. And so we have to do this work. My own children, I want to protect their future. They are the reason that I do this. They are the push, because I want to secure a future with them. I want a planet where they can breathe the air. So I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here every day doing this work. But the only way that we can make it possible is if we mobilize more volunteers, and we have to get out and bring in people who have not previously been a part of this work. We need to bring in our young voters. We need to bring in people from all walks.
10 seconds.
We need to bring in people who have been marginalized. We need to bring them all into the fold and get them working as volunteers and show them why it's important
Time.
to come and do this. Thanks.
So we're actually at 2019. So I think actually that was probably the last question. Do you agree, Danny?
Yeah.
We don't have time
Yeah, I
for the
think
other
so.
questions. Yeah, apologies to the remaining people in the queue. I would like to move on to the final statements. Let me spin the wheel. And let Martha take the first final statement. Thank you.
Well, lucky me. Thanks, Brett. Just thanks to the excellent hosts today and DA France, Germany, Spain, and UK for having myself and my fellow candidates and giving us the opportunity to engage with you, but also with each other. And I'd also like to acknowledge our candidates. We have awesome candidates this time and all the community that makes it possible, because it really takes something to put yourself out there as a DA leader. So thanks everyone for being here today. We heard a lot today, and I just wanted to reflect on a couple of things that we heard. And one is that the work is very complex. And in closing, I just want to remark on the fact that we need to make the work simple. So if we are making the work more complex, which I think we are because we take on more and more and more, a critical job of the chair is going to be to put the planning in place to make exactly clear what we need to do, what we can do, and to make sure that when we have longer term projects, an implementation that takes a year like FEC, or an implementation of state teams, which I think is a 5 to 10 year and very exciting trajectory, that we are really clear and that we put the planning in place so that we know how to get it done. And, we can't afford to leave anything or anyone out. We really need everybody. We need the best of everybody. And we need everything that we've developed over time. And I think that that's really critical. I just wanted to underline that message. And I just also want to mention again that there's several things we need to do. We need to have that governance, planning and training and budget. So new and returning leaders know what they need to do and what to expect. And accountability to our local country committees, knowing that you can count on leadership, is so important. And we need to provide that support to country committees so that you can engage those volunteers that Jennifer just mentioned, who we need, and we can grow our membership. And then we need those global teams so we can organize that global presidential primary. It's our moment to shine and to grow our membership and get media.
10 seconds.
And there's a place for everybody. I want to be working in Democrats Abroad with all of you and all of our leaders from the last cycle. So let's just think about what it's going to be like to wake up in November 2024 when we are successful. And thank you everyone here today for the role you play in choosing the next leadership. I would be honored to have your vote.
Thank you, Martha. I am going through the chairs first, and then we'll do the vice chairs. So next up, the chairs is Art.
Hi, thanks, Brett. And by the way, Andrew, I meant to give you a shout out when I answered your question. You are a Call Hub star. Thank you for all that you do. That's key to victory. You and all the rest of the people who have been phoning in over the years. Thanks very much. I had something written out. I'm going to wing it. Looking back over the last 2 years, and I guess for the last 10 years, a lot of developments have been made over the last 2 years, like creation of the state teams with Jennifer Von Estorff at the lead, using the voter rolls that we got from states under Merrill and Sherry, and the DNC funding, thanks to our great chair, Candace Carriston. And most of it was not for personnel, actually, this go around. It may be in the future, but not for this last go around. Thanks, Bob. Or just to clarify that to you, Bob. We need to continue this progress. We need to continue to be innovative. I am not somebody who is wedded to the way things have always been done, but I'm also not, tied to just innovation for innovation's sake. As people have stressed, we need to analyze what's worked and what's not worked. I think that's what I do. That's what I focus on. I'm going to say one more time because I keep saying it. Earned media is an important component of our strategy in all across the board. I cite this. I know lots of you from Canada know former Ambassador Bruce Heyman. In 2020, our biggest hit on a vote from abroad came from his appearance on Morning Joe, 10,000 votes. Actually, I think the biggest one was Julia Bryan's reading the roll call vote at the convention. So that's the kind of stuff that we need to keep doing. We need to be creative.
10 seconds.
We can spend money. Anyway, if you're interested in finding out more, artforda@gmail.com. I was just told I had to change my email address. So artforda@gmail.com. And I'm running as part of the team with Jazz and Jennifer and Heather Stone. And we're going to have an event on Sunday. I hope you can all join. Thanks.
Thank you, Art. Next up is Jazz.
Great. Well, I have been inspired by the dedication and passion of Democrats around the world who are committed to making a difference. And because of this, I now stand before you sharing my vision and strategies that will drive our core mission, getting out the vote. Thank you for this incredible opportunity today to address to you, each and every one of you today. As International Chair, my goal is to inspire, motivate, and empower every Democrat abroad to know the power of their vote and be a forward-thinking force for positive change. In a time when our democratic values are being tested, when division and misinformation threaten the very foundations of our societies. First and foremost, we must strengthen our community engagement by building connections, organizing local chapters, and fostering a sense of belonging, creating a vibrant and supportive network. Together, mobilizing volunteers, reaching out to every corner of the globe, ensuring that no Democrat abroad is left behind. In this digital age, we have at our disposal powerful tools that can amplify our voices and extend our reach. We must embrace data analytics, technology, and innovation. Lastly, we must collaborate and form strategic partnerships by building bridges between countries, making it easier for overseas Americans to vote. Democracy knows no borders, and our fight for a better future must be a global endeavor. By collaborating with progressive movements and sharing best practices, we can learn from each other. Let us remember the power of our collective action. We are a force to be reckoned with, and our voices matter. Together, we can inspire change, motivate others to action, and empower every Democrat abroad to make a difference. So let us rise above the challenges.
10
Let us
seconds.
overcome the obstacles, and let us be the driving force behind a wave of voter engagement that shapes the future we want to see. I humbly ask for your support and your trust in leading Democrats abroad
Time.
as the next International Chair. Together, we'll turn our ideals into action
Time.
and our dreams
Thank
into
you, Jazz.
reality. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Next up is Jennifer.
Thank you, Brett. And thank you all so much for allowing me to participate in today's candidate forum and for the essential work that you do within your country committees. You are the organization's greatest assets, and working together with the team here in Germany has helped keep me sane and give me hope. Being an empathetic listener who can facilitate better communications and connections, I build bridges and I bring ideas, concerns, questions, and initiatives together. Having already built trusting relationships and done the hands-on work at every level of the organization, I know what goes on behind the curtain, in particular, the areas that need improvement and change. And our team can tackle the important work ahead without delay or disruption, which is vital in our fight for democracy. I am passionate about educating and assisting voters. I am passionate about fighting for voting rights, and I am passionate about empowering our volunteers to mobilize the vote from abroad. Thank you for considering me for the crucial role of DA's International Vice Chair. I'm looking forward to working with the chair to build an open, transparent, determined, and dedicated XCOM. This will be key for our success. In the words of the late, great Texas Governor Ann Richards, the here and now is all we have. And if we play it right, it's all we'll need. So let's play this right and elect an XCOM that will allow us to be the margin of victory. Thank you so much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you on Sunday at our forum.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. And I will say, last but not least, Steve.
Thank you, Brett. All right, so my close is completely out the window because I do need to continue answering the question that was asked earlier. But before I get there, 2 points. I didn't say that DA did not call California. I said Canada did not call California. So just to be clear on that point. And also I would ask people to look closely at the DNO because if I recall correctly, being on the XCOM, it does not protect us from FEC. It protects us from a lot, but not the FEC. So back in January of 2022, late in the year, I was hearing a theme in the region, and it was the F word, and it was fatigue. This was very concerning. I shared this with my XCOM members, to which I was basically ignored for the next 2 weeks. The process for the FEC directive went against every principle and value I possessed as a leader. It didn't acknowledge that one size doesn't fit all. The approach was autocratic. It ignored the capacity of the organization. And in my perspective, it was poorly timed, as GOTV should have been the priority for ramping up. And as we saw with some country committees, some were successful in their transition, but many others were boxed in that they didn't perform anywhere near how they had done previously. Kevin shares my values on leadership. He saw what this was doing to me, and it was not helping us. So his line was, you got to come back. And even if you put these hours into hospice, a far tougher topic, but you find the work far more rewarding. If I had a clue that this ExCom would ignore the charter and not appoint my replacement for 8 months, rather than the 30 days prescribed, I would have risked my marriage. It pained me to see that the country leaders who had elected me to that position were left high and dry. And that the person they did eventually appoint was the person who the chair said
10
to me back
seconds.
in June of 22 was her consideration. So why the wait? Kevin had conversations with Martha. He has faith in her values that volunteers are to be respected and that it
Time.
means more than words. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I believe that ends our evening. I would really want to thank Danny and Ken and Kathy for all their hard work. It's been a pleasure. Do y'all want to say anything at the end here?
Thank you so much, everybody, for coming. It's been a great pleasure. And thank you very much to our candidates for your outstanding statements today and your answers. Thank you.
Well, what she said.
I just want to say thank you to my co-hosts for this evening and also for the evening on Wednesday. And the recordings will be made available on the Democrats Abroad Germany YouTube channel. So if you hit us up in Democrats Abroad Germany YouTube, then you will find the recording from Wednesday, which has already been posted. And then the recording from today will be posted at the latest by tomorrow. So thanks a bunch.
Awesome.
I thought,
Thank you.
Kenton, we heard that you and Emily should be our chair and vice chair.
Okay,
Somebody
can we
say
stop the
that?
recording?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you all very, very much for this great
Thank you.
session.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Does
everyone.
anyone want to hear
Thanks.
Sherry or
Thanks.
Julie have a question?
Thank you,
Many
Kathy.
thanks. Many
It's great to be together.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. And thank you for everyone who came out.
You're breaking up again, Steve.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Can't wait to
Take
see you in
care.
DC. Travel safe.
Oh, the damn, it's that
See everyone
damn
in June.
5G.
Many of you in
It's that
DC.
damn
Looking
5G.
forward to seeing everybody in DC.
Sign up for the gala dinner
Woohoo. Oh, yeah.
if you
I
haven't
think that's
already.
Good reminder,
When it's all done.
Thank you, Isa.
And come to London
I
July
gotta get my
2nd for our
dinner
Where
reserved.
are you putting the recording for this?